Hi, this is Mary Kurek with Frontrunners Innovate magazine. And if you've been watching, and I know you have, you know that we love to interview and talk to people who are doing some fascinating things, given whatever edition of the magazine that we're in. And I kind of reached back into the Frontrunners League to pull out someone I had spoken to probably, 3 years ago now, maybe, Monique. And
Yep.
never forgotten her. She's been wonderful. She's like mentored in our World Hope Youth Mentors program, and she has never stopped educating in her own way. And I just love the way that she goes about it. Now, she's got a great backstory, so we're going to start there. So, Monique, tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are, both geographically and with what you're doing. And then we'll talk a little bit about the programs and projects you've got going on.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for
Monique
having me. I'm
Wells, by
just
the
so
way.
excited. Yes,
I
yes.
didn't
Monique
realize.
Wells.
Yeah.
Yes, Monique Wells, Dr. Monique Wells, veterinary pathologist and toxicologist, coming to you from Paris, France. It is 9 something p.m. here. And yeah, and I'm just, it's like I have to open up my evening for Mary. So, yeah, so how did I get here? So um, veterinary pathology and toxicology is a very important part of that story. I came here in 1992 to work for a drug company, which at that time was called Rhone Poulenc Rohrer. It is now called Sanofi Aventis, and I left there long before it became Sanofi Aventis, but that's how I actually got over to this side of the Atlantic. Um, so I am, oh, um, been here since 1992, so this is my 28th year living in Paris, France. And my husband my husband is also American, and he joined me here a couple of months after I moved here. We actually got married here, and we are just going strong. We're both dual nationals now, and just very, very happy and settled in life in Paris. And I have sort of ceased um, doing veterinary pathology and toxicology as my primary form of professional activity. I actually started a nonprofit organization domiciled in the US in my hometown of Houston, Texas, domiciled there because one of the things that I wanted to do and want to do and continue to do with this nonprofit organization is to help children in the neighborhood where I grew up reading. There's a library in Houston on the south side in a neighborhood called Sunnyside that has a branch of the Houston Public Library called the Johnson branch. And that's where I grew up reading. That's where I developed my love for, um, it's where I decided I wanted to become a veterinarian because I read Dr. Dolittle at a very, very young age. And it's why I'm living in Paris, because I read A Tale of Two Cities at a very, very young age. And I thought, gotta go to those places, you know? Um, and so that library has had a special place in my heart forever. The neighborhood has really, sort of regressed with regard to economic prosperity. It's a very underserved neighborhood at this point. And the children there really do, I feel, need um, they need encouragement to learn to love to read. So to learn to read, yes, but to love to read is what for me is very, very important. And so I want to help them understand that the library is a fun place. They can do a lot of fun things at the library. They can read, but they can also play games, and it's just a fun place to learn. And so that's one of the strategic focus areas of my nonprofit, which is called the Wells International Foundation. And so that's one way that I work to, you know, foster education. Since we started doing that work in Houston, the Wells International Foundation has quote unquote adopted a charter school that serves children in Sunnyside. The school is called Bloom Academy, and it had its first full year in operation last year, so they've started their second year of school this year. They started out with grades K through 1, Now, this year, they have added the second grade, and their goal is to get up to grade 5, adding a grade per year until they have six grades, so kindergarten through 5, being educated there. And we have sort of adopted Bloom Academy. I met the head of school when she was still, formulating the idea of Bloom and looking for a building, et cetera, et cetera. We met at one of the most recent, I will say, readathon that I call the Wells International Foundation, WIF for short, WIF. You can't keep saying Wells International Foundation 15 times. Even I get tongue-tied. So I met her at our last readathon that we held at the Johnson branch, and I just fell in love with her whole concept. College begins in kindergarten, and yeah, and we wanted to support Bloom Academy through our literacy initiative, which we call Reading Never Stops. And to date, we have donated over 1,000 books to Bloom Academy. I'm always very sure that we, in the titles that we send there, because these children are primarily of African descent, and there are some Hispanic children there. So we are constantly looking for books where these children can see themselves in them so that they can have positive visual, identification in books. And we've done, I feel, a remarkable job of that. I'm the one who personally selects the titles. We do a lot of books that are about travel and world cuisines, cultures. So because I want to instill in them early on the idea that they can go places, just like I did. And so I'm just very, very excited about that. And one thing, we're going to start, hopefully, this semester, hopefully, doing a virtual story time with the kids at Bloom Academy, where the authors of children's books will read their books to these kids using Zoom or something equivalent. And I'm really, really thrilled that I just recently entrepreneurship and found that there are girls in publishing their own books, and these girls are
Hey
like,
Monique,
not,
we,
yep,
we, we had you frozen there just for a second. So you were
okay.
talking about the authors reading their own books. Can you go back and share, you were excited about, and then you were trailed off there. Can
Then
you say that again? Yeah.
okay, yes. So we are wanting to do this story time, and we're wanting to have the authors of children's books read to the students at Bloom Academy. And I am excited about having come across an organization called the Startup Squad, which is all about girl entrepreneurship. And among the girls that participate in the Startup Squad, I have found that there are girls that are writing and publishing their own books. And so what I want is to have these girls read their stories to these children. The girls are really not much older than, kindergarten is what, 5, 6, and 7. Kindergarten through grade 2 is 5, 6, and 7. These girls are as young as 6 and 7 years old that are writing and publishing their own books. And so I'm just very, very excited about that. That's one of the ways that the Wells International Foundation fosters education. Our mission, our tagline, if you will, is that we cultivate global citizenship through education and culture.
I've always known about the culture piece, and I'm so glad you're still continuing to tie in that travel and food, and I'm sure art is in there somewhere, maybe even
Oh,
music.
absolutely.
Yeah, I'm
Absolutely.
sure. Knowing you,
Absolutely.
um, this is fantastic stuff. I mean, you also have been doing some things with adults. Yes, I think you have a
Yes,
woman. Yeah, would you
absolutely.
share a little bit about that? Okay.
Okay. So we have a women's empowerment um, area, strategic focus area, and we have been concentrating for the past few years, we've been concentrating on women in leadership. So bringing women together, women who are already leaders and women who are looking to, put that next step forward with regard to upping their game as leaders. And we are encouraging these women not only to lead in their workspace, but also to lead in terms of being philanthropic, whatever that means. And we actually had our first International Women's Day event in Paris last March for women leaders it was called the Successful Woman: Lifestyle, Legacy, and Leading by Example. And we had interactive learning sessions in the mornings, and we had what is called masterminding in the afternoon, so that these women could have time to focus on a professional or personal challenge that they've just not had time to deal with because they are so busy. And we learned in the mornings, and then we applied what we learned in the afternoon in these very private, sort of retreat-like sessions where they could take what they learned and put it to work almost immediately. And so we had leadership on the first morning, we had legacy on the second morning. And during the legacy part, I still get chill bumps when I think about it, because we talked about personal, financial, and philanthropic legacy, and how all of those things intertwine, and how all of those things define and inform how a woman shows up as a leader. And we, at the end of the 2 days, it was a 2-day session, we had women choose accountability partners so that they could apply that they created a plan. So they applied what they learned during the 2 mornings. In the afternoon sessions, they built up a plan, and then going forward, they took that plan forward with someone that they could call upon to hold them accountable. And they left also knowing that I personally intended to call them at the 6-month mark to find out how they were doing with their plans. And the whole idea of accountability is just so powerful. And when I called up those women in September of 2019, I was blown away by the things that they had accomplished. It was just phenomenal. We did record the morning sessions from the Successful Woman 2019, and we've turned them into a training. And so we have the video of the morning sessions, and we also are offering a virtual mastermind. So a gathering of women that can take place. Obviously, it must be virtual at this point, but where they can actually benefit from what was taught last year and apply that in a virtual setting with like-minded women. And again, with the idea of selecting an accountability partner and going forward from that training, so that they can accomplish even greater things that they have already done. And one of the things about the philanthropic part of legacy, it really speaks to giving of one's time and one's expertise. And so one of the things that I really strongly encourage all women leaders to do is to mentor. It is one of the most powerful ways that we can give back. And I've been mentoring people sort of unofficially, if you will, for some time. But WIF has a women's group. It's a fledgling women's group called the L Cubed Alliance, and L Cubed, L to the third power, stands for lifestyle, legacy, and leading by example. And one of the pillars of this group is that we mentor. And so I've started a LinkedIn Pulse article series called Mentoring Matters. Oh God, probably a couple of years ago. And we have several articles online written by women, not only people from the Alliance, but lots of other women who are talking about what they have experienced by being mentored and what they have experienced by being a mentor. And it's just one of the best things you can do.
I agree. You know, I do. You know how I feel about that. And of course, what you've
Yes.
done for, Josie in Africa is amazing. And she said so. So I'm not saying anything I shouldn't say. She's said that. And we've heard that all throughout the World Hope Youth Mentors Program. Just when you think, you're not sure if people are connecting or whatever, the ones that do just stuck and are still communicating and are still making a difference in people's lives. We learned an awful lot doing that. And I think that there's such a need out there. I almost want to say, Monique, you need to do a podcast on that very subject, because it's so important. And I'll tell you why. I actually mentor here locally. And it wasn't a structured program. I do, I've started a couple of youth leadership programs in my past, and one of them started out with some mentoring components. So I'm kind of well familiar with that. But this was just an occasion where I literally was at a local spa and getting a massage and facial and all that kind of stuff. And the woman who was giving me the facial, who actually owned the place, said, my niece is getting ready to go to Johns Hopkins University for a leadership. I said, how old is she? She said 15. I said, let me have her. Just let me have her. I can do things for her. Well, that was like 2 years ago. And my sweet little Marley is growing up before my very eyes. She's like mine. She's about the same age as my granddaughter. This young lady is just like my granddaughter, is a leader in the making. I knew it when I first met her. She was years ahead of herself, years ahead of her little age, and just wanted to get into the medical field. And, I kind of helped her raise a little bit of cash to get up to Johns Hopkins. And then we started communicating back and forth, and I had her start doing a little resume, even from high school, just so you can start to build and understand what your value is and what you're giving back to people. A little bit of writing, a little bit of speaking, and hooked her up with Dr. Watts when she went up to Johns Hopkins. Dr. Wilma Watts is in our network, and she was in that area. And I said, well, this is probably the first time she's left home. Do you mind going to dinner with her while she's up there? She said, sure. I was like, okay, thank you. I love my network. They're awesome. But, it's, and then most recently when she was looking for an internship during the pandemic, actually, this was right before the pandemic, she actually knew where she wanted to be and asked me if I had a contact. Well, me, I didn't have one, but I found one.
Yes.
I found one fast, and it turned out it was the perfect thing for her. So she's now working at a clinical research facility here in town, making more than minimum wage. And this is her first job, more than minimum wage, and all the hours that she can stand. And they fell in love with her. They want her to come back next summer and work some more. And she's just crazy about it. The company culture couldn't have been any better. I mean, walk in the door, the floor is painted like a sea, like the ocean. And there's like a Starbucks set up in a corner for anybody who walks in that wants to enjoy. And it's just, they've got their little mantras all over the walls of, what their belief systems are. They got like a playroom, and it's just, cool. So they've given her books to read that's on team building and things like that she should know. And so it's just really good for her. And it just makes me feel good that I was able to kind of make a connecting point for that. And you never know how things are going to fall out. But I think that is the one thing that I'd say from what you're doing, not only for young people, but also for older folks who have been in the, I mean, honestly, what I learned from her is about as much as she'd learned from me. And then, also just, from my network members like you, I mean, I learn something all the time. As you were talking, I've written notes, and I do. And so there's like 3 more people I'm going to need to introduce you to kind of and feed into what you're doing with the young programs, the little kids programs, the reading and whatnot. And I have a young lady who hasn't written a book yet, but she's done presentations, and she is looking at writing a book. She's 13 years old. Again, one of those that's older than her years allow her to seem. And I would love it if she could, even if it's not her book, to read to the kids, and I know she'd love it. And she is in Tanzania.
So, wow. Oh my God.
Beautiful English.
This is just
got it covered. Yeah. So she would be
God, that's fantastic. I really hope, with COVID, every school system is just like bonkers. We are hoping that we can start before, winter. Um, but as soon as it's up and running, I will definitely let you know. I am
Let
just
me
so
know and I'll
excited.
introduce her to you. Yeah, that's for sure.
Fantastic.
And there's also a U.S. charity, and that I will probably drop into this edition of the magazine. His name is Brett, that works with corporations. And this is something I didn't know for those of you who are out there listening. There are some corporations that will pay a charity per however many hours their employee volunteers for that charity. So
Right.
yeah, and so
Right.
he's got agreements and arrangements like that. So he's often looking for programs to move, those employees to mentor or volunteer, tutor, or whatever in front of.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that helps him. It helps everybody actually, the
It
corporation, the
does.
volunteer, everything.
It
So
does.
that's another person, but I do have some other folks as well. But I think what you're doing is fabulous. I keep going, keep doing it. You're always doing something interesting and fun and really impactful. So thank you very much.
Yes. 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 And can I tell you about our latest project, which you
Yeah.
mentioned the arts earlier,
Yes.
and we're talking about women's empowerment now. And
Yeah.
so for me, with everything that has been happening with COVID-19, and then with George Floyd's murder and the whole explosion of Black Lives Matter, which existed long before that, but it's just taken it to the next level now. We need women as leaders more than ever, ever, ever. This is why I am so focused on, I'm focused on women who are already sort of in position, if you will, and I'm trying to help them magnify their impact. Um, and by virtue of mentoring, we bring up the younger women, okay? But so speaking specifically to COVID-19 and the way women are leading during this pandemic, we are marrying, we with is marrying our women's empowerment and our arts strategic focus areas through a virtual exhibition, a virtual art exhibition that we are going to launch on International Women's Day 2021, so March 8th, 2021. And what we're doing is we're asking women artists, in the first instance, professional women artists, to create a work on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. This exhibition is called COVID-19 Pages. And we're asking professional women artists to create a work on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper that expresses her sentiments about a woman who she either knows personally or who she's read about, who is doing something positive to help us manage this horrendous pandemic. And the person could be, it could be a politician, it could be a physician. We've got all the frontline
Mhm.
workers, we've got the essential workers, but we've also got people who are just in their little corner doing things that are making a difference. And um, we want these professional artists to express themselves with regard to this topic on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. It can be a sketch, it can be a photograph, it can be a collage, it can be watercolor or acrylic paint, whatever. Um, and we are going to, at the same time, be um, bringing to the fore the fact that professional women artists are marginalized to a large degree. They have more difficulty getting their work shown, and they are not paid the same as male artists who are doing the same work. So this is a chance to showcase that at the same time that we are celebrating women during COVID-19. So phase 2 of this is that we are going to be reaching out to youth. We're going to be reaching out to youth groups. We're going to be reaching out to schools. We're going to be reaching out to women's shelters. We're going to be reaching out to elder care facilities. And through the works that these professional artists create, we're going to be asking the people in these various groups to be inspired by those works and create their own works. And we're going to be couching this in terms of art therapy. There's so many people out there who are just, there's all kinds of pent up stress and anxiety, and art is definitely a way that we can release that. And so again, with the same theme, we're going to be asking these girls from K through 12, university students, They could be in art departments, or they could be just doing anything at university. They could be in Big Brothers Big Sisters, or the Scouts, or just any number of organizations like that. We're going to be reaching out across the globe for both our professional and our non-professional artists, reaching out across the globe to ask people to express themselves, to celebrate women who are leading, women who are inspiring, women who are influencing. So COVID-19 pages, the influence and inspiration of women. We actually have our call for professional artists open now. And we're also starting to, we have the call for professional artists open now. We're also going to start reaching out to mental health organizations, because we do want to be sure that people understand that art can be a form of therapy, and we want to bring that in as soon as we can. Even for the professional women artists, this can be a form of therapy. So, so that's our latest and greatest
You
project.
have
Again,
so many things on your plate. Now, can we find all of this on your website? Can we find
yes,
navigate to the applications and registrations and all that? Okay.
yes,
Very good. All right.
yes.
Well, we'll drop that in on this YouTube and also in the magazine so that people can get that. And this is just amazing stuff. All of it's very educational and inspiring and uplifting. And whether it's tied to COVID or not, I think it's a lot of this of what you're doing can continue on, and forget COVID, COVID, what, beyond that. I think this is
Right.
something that's needed beyond that. So
For
thank
sure.
you, Monique.
Sure.
I appreciate it as always. It's always good to see your smiling face. So thank you.
And yours too. Thank you for having me.